Tonight I'm going to do a somewhat complicated storage vMotion. Why is it complicated? Well, I've got a bunch of large drives here on this ESXi 5.5 host. I've shut it off for simplicity and for speed, and I actually don't want it running tonight anyway. So I'm going to let this job run overnight. This is a large job. What are we doing here? Well, we have a problem. I want to evacuate this drive here. And if we browse that data store, you'll see a huge provision size, 7.5 terabytes, but less than a terabyte on there. And it'll fit on this neighbor, this other storage enclosure. So how do we do a storage vMotion for that? So how about we right-click on the VM, say Migrate, and here's the important screen, the Migrate Virtual Machine screen. So change data store is all we're moving. Click Next. And you'll see we have an Advanced tab. That is key. That's what we want. Now, I want you to see as much as possible that's going on here. Okay, I got a bunch of drives. Like I said, it's a little complicated. We've got the configuration file on a screen that's off the bottom. So let's make that bigger. An SSD. Cancel out of that. The actual VM is on the same SSD, nice and speedy, right? But this one is the one we want to move right here. It's the one I showed you a minute ago. Off-site. So that's where it is, and I want to move it to its neighbor that has enough room for it. There, validation succeeded. So I'm ready to click Next. So everyone else is staying right where it is, staying put. And click Finish. And it's going to take a really long time, about 2/3 of a terabyte. So we now just kind of let her rip. If we want, we can look at performance, I suppose, and see that it's doing something. And it's just starting to crank up the disk request right there. It's going to need more time to really show. It's not the fastest array anyway. Okay, so that's it. A look at a VMX 10 VM version running on ESXi 5.5, doing a migration of a drive. It's now about 10 minutes later, and I just wanted to mention that over in the Performance tab, a much better view is to click on Advanced, change it to Data Store, and watch what happens. Let's get rid of the scroll bar there. There we go, so no more scroll bar on the right. Now we can have a screen we can just kind of leave running. And we can see names, right? It makes more sense. Still a scroll bar here, unfortunately, but you get the idea. That can be fixed as well. Kind of weird, there's like a hidden resizer bar there, but strange design. Okay, that didn't work. I'm just running a too low resolution to really show this off, but that's all right. It's just a bar graph marching over time. If we go to disk, the names get a little harder to fathom, right? Virtual disk, kind of worse. Now, what if we just want to look at the overall ESXi host and its performance? Okay, now we have a really nice view. So it's showing us latency. And the colors are a little bit hard to discern at this level. Let's look at some other views. Virtual flash, intriguing. Don't have that set up. Storage adapter. So there is one particular eSATA port dedicated to this external consumer level RAID 5 array. It's a Mediasonic eSATA enclosure that's mapped to this VM and VMFS, or mapped to this ESXi host, excuse me, it's not mapped to anything. ESXi sees it natively and formats that 5.6 gig as a VMFS file system because we're on ESXi 5.5, right? All right, so now we just let it rip, let it run, and let it slowly work on chugging through moving those files tonight. Now about an hour later, and still cruising along here. There's the green line, that's the off-site one, I should point out when you highlight it. Well, it's intended to be off-site eventually. Anyhow, here's the other Mediasonic enclosure, the yellow line. But how do you know how much the data has made the trip? Because this 31% is misleading. It's just sitting there for an hour. Well, here's how we do that. Let's start with the source. So if we browse the source, yeah, the file is just sitting there, full size, right? 654. But what about we browse the target? See some hidden files, by the way. You can't delete those as .stds. All right, there we go. Provisioned is big, the max number that it allowed me, I believe, when I provisioned this thing, or formatted it. And we're about 1/6 the way there. And the number is moving. So there's your progress bar. It's not working down here. So there you go, just injecting a little tip on how to watch progress of a large file copy operation, which is essentially what is happening here with the storage vMotion. Once it's copied, then it'll go ahead and clean up the source and leave it in the target folder, of course. It's now nearly 8 hours later, and things have settled down. There's minimal activity. The important thing to note would be the Tasks and Event tab, where if we look at Relocate Virtual Machine, we can see very clearly the start and stop times. So it took about 6 hours to move the data, but it was a success. So if we head on over to storage, and there's nothing on there. That wouldn't hidden file that you normally find. We browse the target, it's got a file that was already there and the file we moved in at 654. So it's done.